What's in this box is something I never thought I would get to try, let alone ever own. But on a recent eBay shopping trip, this thing caught my eye and I simply could not turn it down. If I showed you the back of the box here, you probably already know what's in it. Yes, this is the Magic Leap 1 Creators Edition. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Magic Leap as a company, doing a tour of this device, and talking a little bit about some of the problems I had during setup. If you do want to see a full review of how this thing is to use in 2022, then let me know in the comment section down below and get subscribed, because that video is sure to be coming very, very soon. So without further ado, let's talk everything Magic Leap. Since its inception back in 2010 by its founder Ronnie Abovitz, Magic Leap as a company has been pretty secretive and shrouded in mystery. Its doors was only ever really opened for investors, and it's been written that these demos that they were shown were pretty incredible. But there was one issue. All of these AR demos were room scale, and Magic Leap really wanted to take all of this extra special technology and kind of crush it down into something that could be worn on your head. That was always the goal and dream of Magic Leap. Whatever happened behind closed doors and within these demos must have been pretty impressive, because it did land Magic Leap nearly $2 billion in investment to date from some of the biggest companies in the world, like Google, Alibaba, and even Qualcomm. Fast forward to 2015, 2016, and we started seeing our first videos of Magic Leap and some of its concepts in its devices. There is, of course, the really infamous Office demo, where the guy was checking his emails and doing a bit of admin before jumping into what we later found out was one of the launch titles, which was a shooter game that I can't even begin to pronounce. I'll put the name on the screen somewhere. It was a stupid name, but the game looked really promising. There was also, of course, the most infamous whale demo, where they just showed a large school hall and this whale popped up out of the ground and splashed down. These demos were visually impressive, enough that they managed to get even more investment and managed to really start to drum up this hype train in the community, particularly that of the VR and AR community. And finally, after 8 long years, in 2018, we were finally ready to start to see the device that we now call the Magic Leap 1. Even after Tony hinting at the price point of around $1,000, when this thing was finally released, it was nowhere near that price point, coming in at closer to $2,200, which is a big difference. And I think that's one of the many reasons this device really failed in the community. In its first 6 months, they only managed to sell around 6,000 of these things, and they actually forecasted to sell closer to 1 million. So why was it such a commercial flop? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the device, get it unboxed, and talk a little bit about why some of the reasons I think this thing really did fail when it came to being a consumer product. Let's go. Okay, so here we are with the box. Now, unfortunately, the guy I bought this from on eBay has kind of written my name all over the front of it and stuck everything to the original packaging, which I'm a little bit annoyed about. I wish he'd spent a little more care and time to pack this correctly so that I had a nice clean box, because I kind of wanted to keep this as a collector's item. But anyway, let's forget about that and worry about what is inside this box. So what we can do is just open up the front, and we are greeted by, well, the devices itself. We've got 1, 2, 3 here. But perhaps more importantly, if I just tilt the camera up slightly, we are greeted by the infamous whale there. Look at him. So we've got our whale Magic Leap 1 Creators Edition, as well as a little spaceman and a load of other really cool stuff as well. Like, this is a nice box and it's nice packaging. If we zoom out, we can see all of the additional hardware that we got in the box, and let's talk about some of that hardware. So it's split up into 3 main sections. We have, of course, I'm missing some of the packaging here again. As I say, I kind of wish it had been packed a little bit better. We're missing the foam from the middle here. But we've got the Lightwear, the Light Pack, and the controller. Underneath the controller we have all of our cables, as well as all American, annoyingly. There we go, so we've got a little American plug there. And on this side we have our fit kit as well. So the fit kit contains some nose pads depending on where you need to sit it on your nose, as well as some forehead packs. You've got 1 and 2 there, if I can get it in shot. You've got 1 and 2 there. Basically these will sit on the front of the device, just so you can get the perfect viewing angles for you. Let's go ahead and take everything out of the box and talk about each of the products individually. In the middle here we have the Lightwear, named as such because you wear it and it projects, well, light into your eyes for you to actually view it. We've got all of the sensors along the front, as well as the band, and all of these nice little comfy pieces, including on the bottom, places where you can change out both the nose piece and the forehead piece to get your perfect fit. Now this is all tethered to this little guy. Well, I say little, this is actually quite heavy. This is the Light Pack. Basically, Magic Leap went down a completely different route to every other device creator, much like the HoloLens. This is now a tethered device. Rather than having all the hardware in the Light Pack here, which made it quite heavy and could sometimes feel a little unwieldy, it's now just connected via 2 cables to this pack that you now attach to your body somewhere. So in my case, I just attach it to my hip. And it also takes away some of that heat as well. So this has a fan inbuilt and does all of that sort of jobby as well. And finally here we have our controller as well. This is the controller, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but we do only get 1 in the box. It is 6 off, so at least we get that, but it would have been nice to see 2 controllers here to enable a few different AR experiences. The Light Pack itself here is surprisingly comfortable, coming in at around 315 grams. The optics, however, is where most of the meat and potatoes of this device is. We have a 6-layer optics waveguide here, as well as a chip built into each eye. And what this allows for is for 3D images, no matter whether you have 1 eye open or 2. If you were to close one of your eyes and still look, you would still have the illusion of 3D with all of the holograms. And that is something that we've never really seen before and was incredibly impressive tech for the time. We also have eye tracking as well as iris scanning for logging in and interactions in certain applications, as well as the sound on the side here, if I can get that in shot. So we have 2 speakers for stereo sound, as well as all the microphones as well. On the front here we can see all of these different sensors, from the IR sensors in the middle to help with room scanning, as well as 2 sets of cameras to help with that scanning as well as recording AR experiences and showing it to an end user. The computer comes packed with an NVIDIA Parker SoC, a 2-Denerva 2.0 64-bit core, and a 4-ARM Cortex A57 64-bit core processor, an NVIDIA Pascal GPU with 256 CUDA cores, 8GB of RAM, 128GB of SSD storage, Bluetooth 4.2, Wi-Fi 1802.11, as well as USB-C. All of this led to around a 3-hour battery life. Let's be honest, these things look super futuristic and almost bug-like. We can see the massive range of LiDAR and infrared sensors on the front, as well as all those cameras to help with mapping and tracking as well. It's also got that frankly impressive 6-layer waveguide, which I think is even overkill for me. There really didn't need to be this many. So as you can see on my face, you can judge for yourself, I think this thing looks alright. And it really looks better than many of the other AR and VR devices I've used in the past. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit about that controller. Before we do though, I just want to say that if this is the first time that you're seeing my face on your screen, then 1, lucky you, and 2, go down there, hit that subscribe button, smash that bell notification icon so you get notified every time I upload. Anyways, without further ado, let's talk the Magic Leap controller. Here is the controller. It's simple yet effective. You have a large trackpad in the middle, and this allows you to swipe or touch. You get a trigger and a bumper, but that really is it. This controller feels like it could have and should have been so much more. Even if we just had 2 of them, we could have done a lot more with AR experiences. This was a very limiting controller, and yes, we did have hand tracking of some sort, but there needed to be more here to enable better and more in-depth experiences. What's perhaps the most interesting about this controller is actually how it tracks. So many other controllers, much like the Quest 2, uses an inside-out tracking from the headset and infrared around the band to allow it to track while it's being seen. This means that it's very low latency and it's high accuracy. However, Magic Leap have done something very different and hadn't really been done before, and that's using a magnetic field. So it knows where it is based upon the headset due to magnets and gyros. This meant that even if the devices couldn't see each other, you could still use it to track. This did lead to a less than perfect tracking experience. It was very jumpy, it was quite slow, and overall just wasn't a brilliant experience. I think it was actually an oversight on Magic Leap's front to use this technology here, because you didn't get the accuracy that you perhaps would want from an AR or VR headset. So that's the hardware. Let's talk a little bit about how I set up the software. So as I mentioned, I bought this thing off of eBay and it's from a seller who obviously hasn't used it in quite a long time. It was running quite an old Lumin OS, but I got it factory restored and ready and set up to start using. I started going through the setup process, which was actually pretty easy and very fun. You made you use the fit kit to make sure that you had the right fit on your nose and your brow to make sure that everything looked good. Then it was time to start to log into the device. I typed in my email, typed in the secret code, and then it just tells me that it failed to register my device. It didn't really give a reason for it and just told me to contact support. This is apparently a known issue with Lumin OS of older versions, that it just cannot register itself if it's on an older version of the app. More annoyingly still though, is that there's no way to update to the latest Lumin OS without registering the account or registering the device to your account. So you kind of just had an expensive paperweight by that point. Thankfully though, Magic Leap's support was actually really quick and very easy. And what they did was they pointed me in the right direction to type in all of my device's details to download a custom version of the latest Lumin OS app that's signed to my device. Then all we needed to do was install it. Now, if you're used to installing custom OSs on phones through ADB, you already know and feel pretty comfortable here of what you're doing. But of course, because this is a Linux repo rather than an Android repo, you're not using ADB, you're using MLDB, which is just Magic Leap's version. So basically, you just have to flash it all yourself. This is something that I feel quite comfortable with, but I still found was a bit of a faff. Many people would not want to have to do this, so if you're not incredibly tech apt, you do not want to grab one of these devices because setting it up is going to be more pain than it's really worth. Finally though, after all the flashing was complete, I was ready to start using it and looking around the OS. And I must say the operating system is perhaps the most impressive bit about Magic Leap 1. The OS just felt fun, easy to use, intuitive, and there was just something very charming about it. I knew where everything was, I knew how to use everything. I could place stuff onto my walls, into my physical space, and it would persist across all of my sessions. So for example, I could have a web page on my left wall and something else on my right wall, and as soon as I load it back up, it would be back there ready to go. It is super impressive stuff, and I can see why it was certainly a consumer-facing device from an OS standpoint. However, when it came to AR applications and games and things to do on the device, outside of the first-party applications, there really just wasn't much here. And what was here was lower than some quality. They just don't run very well. Apps are not intuitive, I don't understand how to use them, and this is coming from quite a techie person. So from an everyday person who is just a consumer, these kinds of applications just confuse and, quite frankly, put people off this kind of hardware. If they don't know how to use it, then they're just not going to use it. And that's another one of the big contributing factors as to why I think this failed. So it's clear to me at this point that Magic Leap pushed this device to be more towards a consumer base of everyone. So that does beg the question, what the fuck went wrong? So let's talk about some of the problems and why I think this failed as badly as it did. To answer it simply, this device was simply too expensive. After being teased at the £1,000 price point, this thing coming in at $2,200 was just a bitter pill to swallow for too many consumers. It was sort of out of the range of the everyday, maybe just about in the range of the enthusiast, but there wasn't enough here for an enthusiast to really jump at the opportunity. Outside of this as well, I think they simply targeted the wrong audience. This thing is not built for the everyday person. It is built for, well, it's in the name, creators and developers. This was, at the end of the day, a developer kit, getting it ready for a new version of the Magic Leap that was more consumer facing. Its focus on Lumin OS being Linux-based rather than Android was also another one of its downfalls. As mentioned, developers didn't want to have to develop for this brand new system. And frankly, it just wasn't very easy to do. Finally, I think it's the hype that actually killed this device the most. After 8 years of teasing, this thing finally came out and it really didn't live up to any of its claims. Don't get me wrong, this was a good AR device for the time, but it just didn't fulfill all of the claims that many of the people in the company had before its launch. The AR didn't look quite right. Things still looked a little bit hollow. The tracking was not perfect. The room scaling and room scanning was okay, but could have done with a lot of work. There were better products on the market already, such as the HoloLens and the HoloLens 2 by the time of the release of the ML1. If I had to chalk it down to one thing, I would simply say that it's too little, too late for Magic Leap 1. However, they have just released, or are about to release, the Magic Leap 2, which answers basically all of the problems that we had with the Magic Leap 1 here, starting with its operating system. It's now Android based, which means that many of the applications that developers are already building should just be able to build and run directly on the Magic Leap. We also have local dimming zones, a much higher field of view, and quite a few other things that make it a much more well-rounded and innovative device. They aren't targeting it at consumers anymore though. This is now a business device only and is reflected in the price tag of around $1,000 more for the base model. I really do hope that one day I get a chance to play with the Magic Leap 2 because I would love to see the differences between the two models and kind of understand just how far they've come in such a short space of time. Anyway guys, what do you think of the Magic Leap 1? Do you think that this device is just a little bit too little too late? Do you think that it is innovative enough to have warranted much better sales than it did? Or are you in agreement with me that though this is a great device, it could have been so much more? Let me know in the comments section down below, and of course, my name's been Robert, this has been Review Clue, and I will catch you in the next one. Adios.